What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. Today I wanted to talk about the 2024 version of one of my favorite spells in the game, Dimension Door. Dimension Door is one of the few spells I consider to be an absolute must-have. I take it on every single caster that has it on their spell list, and even on PCs where they don't have it available, I try and get it for them through an item, generally a tattoo, or perhaps a Cape of the Mountebank, one of the best items in the game since it's non-attunement and it allows you to Dimension Door once per day. I tend to play in Westmarches, which are generally item-rich environments, and so I can generally get tattoos of Dimension Door, and I always make it a priority because Dimension Door is so good. Now, there's only a couple of differences from the 2014 version versus the current 2024 version. 3 changes. One is very good. You can teleport a creature with you when you cast Dimension Door, but in the 2014 version it had to be of your size or smaller, and this led to issues if you were, say, a small-sized caster trying to bring your medium ally, or if you were a medium ally and you're trying to bring your large ally or your mount or what have you. You couldn't do it. It had to be your size or smaller. They have changed that in the 2024 edition. Now you can just bring along a willing creature, and it doesn't matter if they're bigger than you. So I think that's a great change. Very happy to see it. One negative is that you can no longer teleport objects with you. This was possible in the 2014 version, but not in the 2024 version. And finally, they changed the verbiage from you teleport yourself 500 feet to you teleport 500 feet. And this is a seemingly minor change, but it's going to actually have an impact on something that we will talk about a little bit later. But first, I just wanted to go over the spell and what you can do with it. It's a 500-foot teleport to anywhere you want. You can specify a location or just a place that you visualized. There's not too many restrictions in that regard. So basically, anywhere you want. And 500 feet is a long ways. So it provides a lot of offensive and defensive capability that you don't get with, say, a spell like Misty Step, which only has a 30-foot range. Now, in terms of offense, you can use it in a couple different ways. One is Infiltration. If you are trying to penetrate a stronghold or headquarters or some kind of facility, Dimension Door is an awesome way to do it. Now, you might need to pair it with some Clairvoyance or Arcane Eye or sending your familiar in there to check it out. But once you get a sense of where you want to go, you can teleport 500 feet right inside, and you can bring an ally with you. Now, generally parties are not just 2 people. It's usually 4 or 5 people, so you might have to get creative on how you get the entire party to that spot. You might have to blow a bunch of spell slots and on multiple trips and bring everyone one at a time. Maybe you reduce somebody in size and put them in a bag of holding, and then you can bring 3 or 4 characters at once, or maybe prepare scrolls for this if you've got a lot of time to prepare. But regardless, you can do it, and Dimension Door is the engine that makes the whole thing work. So that's a pretty awesome way to use it. You can also use it offensively on the same map. If you're engaging enemies that, say, have a front line and a back line, you can use it to completely bypass the front line and get right to the back and attack the vulnerable casters or what have you that are raining down arrows or spells or nasty stuff on your party while you're engaged with the front line. Now, keep in mind that Dimension Door does take an action to cast, so you might not want to immediately just Dimension Door back there and then be hanging for a round while they attack you first. But what you can do is ready your action, maybe find cover so that your concentration doesn't get disturbed, but ready your Dimension Door, and then you can use the trigger of the end of the turn just prior to yours, and then you Dimension Door during that turn, and then it's immediately your initiative, and then you can take your action and get a surprise attack in on their backline. So it's pretty awesome for that offensive use. But where Dimension Door really shines is in its defensive capabilities. I'm a defensive-minded player, and so I really take my defense seriously. And Dimension Door fills a couple of slots in a defensive suite that you really can't do with anything else. Now, the immediate thing that comes to mind as to what it's good for is to escape a grapple. Right? Sometimes there's these big nasty creatures that grapple you, and you really want to get away, and you don't want to risk a die roll. You need to teleport out of there. Now, Misty Step can be used for this as well, and that's only a second level spell and a bonus action, so that might be preferable in terms of escaping grappled. But what if you're swallowed? There's a lot of things in this game that can swallow you, and then you're blinded and you've got total cover all around you, and you're not going to be able to Misty Step out of there. In cases like that, Dimension Door is a really must-have option. I've used it many times to escape the gullets of giant worms or beasties that like to swallow, and it's really indispensable for that. So that's a really awesome defensive use of it. It's also good for escaping walls when you can't see. Maybe your enemy is getting clever and they put up a fog cloud and then Wall of Force you. You can't use Misty Step to get out of there as well because Misty Step requires sight. Dimension Door does not require sight, and so you can use it to escape while you're blinded and restrained or enclosed, so that's pretty awesome. But where it really shines for me is in extractions. If you're a defensive-minded player, one of the things that you really need to plan for is when you need to make a tactical retreat. And in such cases, Dimension Door is just so fantastic. You can bring an ally with you, so you can extract yourself and one of your party members. And 500 feet, again, that's a really long ways. It doesn't worry about walls and obstacles in between you, so you can get to a really safe spot. So again, for extractions, you really can't do it with anything other than Dimension Door, and that's another reason that I consider it a must-have. Now, one of the nice combinations that you can use with Dimension Door in a defensive capacity is with Contingency. I guess you could also use Contingency in that way as an offensive Dimension Door if you have some kind of active trigger that you use for it. But in terms of passive triggers, Dimension Door is a favorite to pair with Contingency, precisely because it's so good at extracting you. You can just set it up so that when you get to a certain number of hit points, or when you go down to 0 hit points, or whatever, when you're in bad shape, the Dimension Door can just get you right out of danger. So it's a really amazing defensive spell for extractions. So one of the things that I recently learned about Dimension Door is that it will not extract you from a Prismatic Wall. I was always under the impression that teleport spells like Dimension Door and Misty Step targeted the caster, and that's why they were able to circumvent total cover, because in this game, if you are behind total cover, then you are excluded from any spell effects that emanate from a straight line from the caster, unless it has special verbiage that it folds around corners like Fireball. And so if you cast Teleport just on yourself, then you can circumvent cover and go anywhere you want, as described in both of the spells. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. If you look at the target for Misty Step, it is self, and if you look at the target for Dimension Door, it's 500 feet. And so that's why I think they changed the verbiage from to teleport yourself 500 feet to teleport 500 feet, is because that made it a little unclear, and apparently this is how it's supposed to work. The Dimension Door spell does not target you, it targets a space up to 500 feet away. And that's why it doesn't work with Prismatic Wall, because Prismatic Wall blocks spell effects. And so where you could Misty Step out of a Prismatic Wall, if you had blind sight or something and could see beyond it, you cannot Dimension Door out of it. And I didn't believe it because it didn't seem to make any sense to me, and it wasn't necessarily supported by the rules as written, but it was pointed out that Jeremy Crawford did confirm it, that it is supposed to work this way. And I tend to be a rules as intended guy, and if Jeremy Crawford says that something was intended to work in a particular way, I tend to go with that, although I know that JC's opinion doesn't actually change the rules as written. And my immediate response when I learned this was like, well, then Dimension Door can't go through walls or anything either. It's going to be useless for getting you out of a swallowed creature's gullet because of the line of effect rules. Again, you cannot extend a line of effect past total cover. But again, Jeremy Crawford clarified the rules as intended were like, no, actually it does do that because the entire first paragraph is a long-winded way of saying that it's an exception. And I have to say, to be perfectly honest, when I'm reading that paragraph, I don't see that it calls out any exceptions and makes any claims that it can defeat total cover or it doesn't require line of effect. So if you are playing with a DM that's really rules as written in his philosophy, I probably wouldn't say that based on this ruling of it targeting a space 500 feet away, that it would go through total cover. The spell as intended seems to be that it does go through cover, but it does not go through a prismatic wall. So I had no idea after playing this game for several years that was how it was intended to work. But yeah, kind of an interesting ruling, right? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know what you think about Dimension Door in general. And thanks so much for watching. This has been Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. See you next time.